is what we gain in convenience when we shop on Amazon Prime, a trade-off for true authenticity and skill from creators. Investing is just one way that you could take care of your future finances by giving your money more potential to grow.
With Wealthify, you can start investing with as little or as much as you'd like.
And luckily for you, Wealthify is offering all Money Unfiltered listeners the chance to get an extra £50 boost to your investment pot.
You can pick a risk level that's right for you and know how much you're paying for your investments to be looked after by their team of experts, thanks to their clear and affordable fees.
So if you've been thinking about starting to invest and you've been putting it off, then now could be the perfect time to make the leap.
So what do you need to do? Simply open a Wealthify plan and invest £50. Then, after 12 months of the money being invested, Wealthify will add another £50 to your plan. How great is that? Now for the legal bit. T's and C's obviously apply, and this offer is open to new Wealthify customers only.
It will only be available to the first 500 qualifying customers. And you'll also need to claim the offer via the dedicated landing page and pay £50 into your plan by the 31st of December 2022.
Head to the show notes for the link to claim this offer and read the full T's and C's, or head to wealthify.com/Money Unfiltered.
And remember, with all investing, your capital is at risk and you could get back less money than you put in. Wealthify is also authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority.
So amazing to have you here after such a long time. And you have obviously been really busy since I've seen you last. I just want to start by asking you why you have founded Jamii. Why does it exist? And what was the thing that really sparked the idea for you?
So when we were at Manchester,
Yeah.
obviously the first wave of the Black Lives Matter movement was starting to pick up steam. Like even at one point, I remember the founders of the US chapter even came to uni. And so there was kind of a bubbling consciousness kind of going on generally. But me in particular, I'd always known about the issues that the Black community in America particularly, but also obviously here in Britain, were facing. But around that time, there was just a real conversation around, okay, this has been happening for a really long time, but what can we as individuals start doing? Because it's clear we can't rely on government institutions. We can't necessarily rely on politics. Like as an individual, how can I do something? And very similar to what happened in summer of 2020, a lot of people were like, I should support some community-owned businesses. That's what I should do. But like back in, 2015, around that time, like it was a lot easier said than done.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that conversation was happening a lot on social media, but it wasn't actually translating into action. So we basically thought, well, what if there was like something that inspired people to take that action? And then at the time we had this thing called a taste card, which
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
like 2-for-1 restaurants. So every time you're going out to eat, you're like, wait guys, let me look on my taste
Yeah,
card.
of course.
Literally like, I wonder if we can replicate that for Black-owned businesses. So that's how we got started. It was literally so rudimentary. It was so basic. It was just like a plastic card that you just showed at market stall or shop or wherever you went. And then the website that we had was pretty static as well.
Did you do any kind of like research and get to any point of like, now we have proof of concept? Or was it just like, we've got this idea, let's like run with it, and you just went for it?
I wish I could tell you that I had like a business plan. But no, actually what happened was, so in the summer of 2015, we had the idea. But obviously, like I did PPE. I'd never done a business. So I was like, I have no idea like what I'm going to do. But I ended up going to Kenya for a few months. It was basically like an entrepreneurial program that was organised by the government. And long story short, I was like an extra pair of hands for these really small businesses in Kenya. And I realised when I was there, because there's a really entrepreneurial culture there, and I realised it's just a case of just start, just do something, and then see the feedback, and then based on the feedback, you work on your next step.
Yeah.
So when I got home, I was like, okay, literally all I need to do, like put all my plans and my visions away. All I need to do is work out. Businesses actually be interested in working with me on this, because if no one wants to join my discount card, then it's a non-starter. That's it. So I basically just like went on Instagram, started DMing a bunch of people, started finding a bunch of phone numbers, called a bunch of businesses and said, look, here's my idea. What do you think, first of all? But second of all, also, like, what are your experiences? Do you even think that this would work? Because there's no point me doing it. And you guys are like, this is not the problem. Like, this is the problem is something else. But it was very much like step by step. Then I set up the social media. Oh, were people interested in following? Like, did people interact, etc.? And then we did the website, and then we did a nice little launch party.
I mean, you mentioned it there about like the problem that you were trying to solve, but what was that problem in your mind when you first started out with the business?
In my mind, the problem was people want to do the right thing, but people are also very busy and are on autopilot most of the time. And so there needs to kind of be an incentive to get people to kind of do an action and do it repeatedly. It was like creating habits. Like we need to try and get people to create habits, because the thing is as well, it's so easy to shop with big businesses. That's the whole point. That's they make it so easy. So there is more friction involved when you're not just a black-owned business, a small business, an ethical business, anything like that. There's more friction involved. And so you do have to kind of create some sort of incentive, whether it's financial, whether it's emotional as well, because obviously people want to feel a way when they spend money. So that was it for us.
One of the things I'm particularly interested in is that Jamii is exclusively for Black British business. Why is the exclusivity aspect so important?
That's such a good question. People don't ask me that question.
Yeah.
You know? It's such a good question. The reason is, like, first of all, I'm part of that community. So I feel like it's a bit disingenuous for me to be trying to represent communities that I'm not from. So
Sure.
that's the first thing. Second thing is the issues faced by Black British businesses are unique to Black British businesses. I don't know if you've kind of seen any of the commentary around this term BAME over the last couple of years. You know, people from different ethnic communities have different experiences for so many different reasons. I'm not going to go into them now. They have different experiences. And so there's no kind of one size fits all for, oh, you're a person of color, so we'll do something.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also kind of going back to really galvanizing people. It needs to be more specific so people can really connect with the why. Because otherwise we're kind of just like, yeah, just don't support white businesses.
Yeah.
which is not the vibe that we're going for. Like if there's something really specific about Black businesses, and also about how important it is to be able to find particular products. So one of the first bits of feedback we get from customers was like, oh my God, it's so easy now to find greetings cards with Black people on them.
Yeah. I saw that and I was like, yeah, obviously.
Literally. Or like oven gloves with plantain on it. Like you don't get that anymore.
I can relate. Like if I'm in another country and I see something Jewish, like on the other side of the world, it's like, yes, like
you feel
connected in some way.
And that was really important as well. And I think if we were like, we'll just do everything, you do lose that. But when I started, because kind of this notion of supporting Black-owned businesses, or even like the Black British identity wasn't like so mainstream.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of people being like, well, why don't you just make it all ethnic minority? Yeah. Or why don't you hide what it really is and just don't say Black and say other things? But I was just like, no. But I'm really glad that I kind of just stuck to my guns. I was like, no, like this, it's important that we are proud of who we are, because we are. It'd be a bit weird for us to be shying away from it.
Yeah.
But also for other people to be able to really connect with what we're doing as well.
Can I ask, have you found by bringing these people with the same specific challenges together, that in itself, like the Jamii community, those businesses being alongside one another, have they connected and like helped each other?
Yeah, definitely. Like, there's a real kind of camaraderie, not just within our community, but within the business community just generally. So we try and do as many like meetups or kind of community events as we can. And people are always like, oh, you need this? I've got someone for that. Yeah. Or, oh, you can come and use my studio if you need that. And
completely.
Yeah, like that kind of pooling of resources and that kind of, I will happily help you. Yeah. Which I think is just beautiful.
It's completely, yeah.
I think one thing that actually I'm interested in is this focus on the Black British experience as a business owner. And I wondered if you could tell us a bit more about like, the challenges that you have seen that the community that you work with specifically have faced.
Yeah, so there are kind of a few key challenges. And it's interesting because at the beginning, there wasn't a huge amount of data. And so you kind of have to go off anecdotal and kind of the things that you kind of know, but there's no numbers for it. But increasingly, there is more and more research coming out, which is amazing. But the main things are kind of access to finance. So things like just not having access to bank loans. It can be for a variety of different reasons. It's not as clear cut as being like the banks won't loan to black people. It's not like that. It's very nuanced. But it is a fact that black businesses struggle with access to bank loans. They struggle with access to networks of investors as well. And then even when they do get in front of investors are like, I don't understand what you're saying. Like, you don't look like me. You're not selling a product that I understand. And so I'm going to pass. The opportunity's not for me. Obviously, I'm generalising, but this is
of course.
The kind of general experience.
I think this would take a lot of hours to really go into.
And then also, of course, access to other networks, which are just useful. Knowing people, like generally Black British entrepreneurs don't know as many influential people, kind of people who can open doors for them, decision makers. And then it's just access to knowledge, just generally, which again is linked to all the things I've just said. And so those things kind of start to intersect to hold Black entrepreneurs back.
It's such an interesting point, actually, that access to finance, because it's something that I've seen an increasing amount of conversation actually around women, but that as a section of society, women who are looking to raise finance also struggle when they're in front of investors, because the investors, who are typically men, can't relate to the experience or the problem that they're solving. And I guess, like you mentioned, a lot of the businesses that you work with are solving or talking to a customer base that look like them, and that can relate to their experience.
Who don't understand why you need oven gloves with plantain on them.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So it's such an interesting, I guess, factor that a lot of people, I think, probably don't even think about as a player in why it's difficult.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, investor circles generally are kind of pale, stale, and male. And I can't remember exactly what the bias is called, but you know, when you just, that person reminds me of me. I like them.
Oh,
like
yeah.
If you're a woman, or if you're a person of color, if you're a woman of color, you don't look like them. Your experiences aren't the same, and so that first level of connectivity is not there. And like you said, if you're then coming in talking about products which they've never even heard of, it's not going to happen. I mean, there are definitely strides being made, especially with women, but also with ethnically diverse businesses as well. There are new kind of funds getting started up.
Yeah,
VCs in particular are trying to.
Yeah,
they are trying, especially because there's more data around the value of the black pound as well. So they're like, you guys actually spend quite a lot of money, don't you? Let's get in there. And, there's so many stats around how Black women tend to spend like 3 times more on beauty products than anyone else. Yeah. So all of a sudden people are like,
I can get a bit of this.
Yeah. I understand why you need these things now. Yeah. It's just data is just so important.
Yeah, that is so interesting. And one of the questions I was going to ask you, aside from joining Jamii or being connected to a community, what are the other key things for Black British business owners to thrive? Like, what really needs to change?
Oh my God, that's a big
question.
So I think the first thing comes down to access to knowledge. I think that's the first thing. And I think there are a lot of organizations, especially over the last couple of years, which have really tried to make things more accessible, but I think they're not quite connecting with the audience. You can create all these amazing programs or video content series or whatever it might be, but if you're not connecting with the intended audience, if you're not going where they're going, then they're not going to learn. Obviously, access to finance is a huge thing. And so I know that there are banks. So one thing that happened in the wake of kind of the summer of 2020 is a lot of organizations started being like, you know what, we've had enough as well, actually. And we're going to start to institutionalize some changes. We're going to start to commit money, resources, manpower to making a change. So there are some banks who've committed to real money behind even things like training up their team, like bank managers, making sure that the bank managers are more diverse, making sure they're more culturally aware, who've put money into supporting grassroots organizations, because a lot of things, for instance, Jamii, like I started Jamii's grassroots organization. There's a lot of other people like us.
Yeah.
So supporting people like us to carry on doing what we're doing and keep that flywheel going. Like, I think that's another thing which is really, really important, which again, banks and some big organizations have shown commitment to doing even 2 years on.
And specifically on that point, because I think loads of people watching will want to support you, and I know a lot of people say it, and like you say, things are easier said than done. How can people support Jamii?
So as a individual shop, buy from us. Obviously, we've got more than 250 black makers on the site. So you can get anything from kind of homeware to greetings cards. Like I said, you can get hot sauces. You can get your hair care, your skincare. Like there's a huge array of products that you can get. So I would definitely say have a look on the site, see if there's anything that you fancy. Like all of the makers are amazing. We tell the stories, or like their stories on the site as well. But even just spreading the word, like so many opportunities that we've had or that we've been able to pass on to the guys that we work with have come from someone somewhere saying our name in a great room.
Yeah.
As someone being like, oh, have you heard of Jamii? Like, I think they would be good for this or something like that. So never underestimate the power of just saying a business's name to someone else.
You mentioned there the impact of summer in 2020 and how a lot of businesses have responded to that and the changes that were made in a lot of big organizations. But have you seen that that has lasted, and are you still seeing that there is this ongoing commitment to opening doors and to being more inclusive? Or was it something that kind of happened and the change hasn't continued?
That's a really interesting question. So the answer is everything you said. So on the one hand, for a lot of businesses or bigger organizations, I want to say actually, like, you know, people who do have, you know, access to resources, for a lot of them, they were like, and now we've moved on, you know.
It was like, we've done our, we've ticked our box, we've done our bit.
Did Blackout Tuesday and
posted my black square.
Yeah, literally. During that time, the 6-week period, we had emails from almost everyone. It got to like 1st of September and it's like, hey, like, do you still want to progress this or what? Like, but for some, they have been really, really committed to doing something. It's important to kind of note that this is a huge thing, that these are systemic changes that need to happen. And so 2 years is just a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
And so there are some guys who kind of have really been like, right, we're going to start, for instance, like doing sponsorships with more black-owned businesses or partnerships, and we're going to start committing resources from the jump. There are some who are like, no, wait, we want to make sure we're really doing the right thing. So we're going to do research, we're going to get focus groups and get people around the table. So different organizations have gone about it in different ways, but the vim is really there, which is amazing. And some of them have really long-term visions for it as well, because, I mean, we're talking about, like I said, system. It's not going to happen in 2 years.
Yeah, it's so funny actually that you say that, because we were talking earlier about the fact that when you look at context of history, the context of time, particularly around issues with women, especially, there are a lot of things which have happened in actually a relatively recent period, which we forget are recent. And I think it's a really valuable point that you made there, that 2 years is not actually a very long time. And that if we want to see change that lasts, that actually maybe we, in some respects, have to have a bit of patience with these global corporations if they are actually committed to making those changes, to actually implement them and to do the research and do the work properly.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think for me, as long as you've got the energy and the commitment and you are committed to devoting resources, that's what's important right now. And then kind of seeing the impact and how that kind of gets rolled out over the next few years is what I'm kind of looking towards. No singular business here is going to do one thing that they've come up with in the last 2 years that's going to completely change things for everyone.
I've seen you saying that when we shop independent, you know, we're obviously investing in people, and actually we do vote with our wallets. Do you think we underestimate the power we actually have as consumers?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, we have power. Because if we didn't, you wouldn't see so much like greenwashing, like all of the fast fashion brands being like, oh, we've got this, we've got that. Because they know that people care where they put their money, increasingly for younger generations as well, like millennials, Gen Z. They are really, we and they you know, really care about like what we're supporting.
Yeah.
I think people underestimate when you go and get your coffee from, you know, the local place instead of one of the big chains, what that does. Like even just putting smiles on the people's faces because they've seen you twice in a week.
Some of us have become so on autopilot, we forget. And it's like bringing it back. And I actually suspect that if more people felt the experience, they'd be like, yes, I want to do this more.
Yeah.
But I guess I feel that in itself is a barrier. Like, how do you get them over that line
Yeah.
to like try this?
At Jamii, we put such an emphasis on storytelling so people understand like you're not just buying like a shea butter, like you're getting a shea butter which is handcrafted in a kitchen in Croydon, and the recipe was passed down from an auntie. Do you know what I mean? There's more to it than that. And then we also do we do our pop-up shops, we've done marketplaces so people can actually meet the makers as well. They can see
That's
the products.
very cool.
Like, it becomes an experience, especially because so much is online and you just scroll. Like it's really hard for you to connect with anything, regardless of where it's coming from. So when you kind of create a real experience around it, it kind of penetrates a little bit more like people's consciousness. But yeah, I think that's what's really important, like making sure that people realize and remember like these are people, like we're buying from people. At the end of the day, like you said, Amazon Prime is so easy, or any of these things that, oh, you spend X amount, it's free delivery or it's next day delivery and whatever. And when you're working with a bunch of small businesses, it's really hard to compete with things like that. But those things are so important to customers because it's, you know, one, you're busy, and two, you do have a finite amount of money. Like, you know, of course you're going to kind of lean towards those things. But on the flip side, people do want to connect. And I think now especially, people want to feel like they're part of something.
Completely.
They do want to feel like they're supporting the things that they really believe in. They want to feel like they are leaving some sort of legacy, even if it's really small. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, that's the same reason why kind of people will donate to charities or things like this. They want to feel like they are doing something to make the world a better place, even in a small way. Yeah. And that's the thing, like you are, like when you do buy from an independent maker or you go down to a small business, like you are changing the world. It's okay, you're not president, but like that's still something. And I think it's something that should be celebrated.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so true. And I feel like I get that when I go and buy something from like a local place. Like I do feel so much more excited about it. And I think you're right. I think in some respects it's a habit shift that we have to get used to when it comes to shopping with smaller businesses, and maybe not having the same expectations in terms of everything arriving like in 2 hours. I'd be interested to just know as well a little bit more about how Jamii works in terms of for the businesses that you work with. So you said, you know, when you first had the idea that you went out and spoke to some of them and said, is this something you'd be interested in? What is the proposition to the businesses that you offer?
Well, so back then it was, well, I say back then, it hasn't changed a huge amount, but essentially it's kind of like a marketing proposition for them. So we obviously have our own brand, we have our own audience, our own community, our own reputation. So people will kind of come onto the Jamii website and they will find businesses that they may not have found before. So that's kind of part of the marketing thing. So we kind of are putting our own energy and our own resources into building up our reputation, and by extension, those of the guys that we're working with. Like we're obviously posting them across our socials, we post them in our newsletter, we create all of these events, pop-up shops and marketplaces for them to come down and to sell to as well. So that's kind of the first thing. And then we also do kind of a lot of like behind the scenes like workshops for our makers. Like we've connected them with mentors, we try and give them access to as many opportunities as come across our desk as possible, because the other thing as well is that people just email us and be like, oh, do you know anyone who wants to do this? Or do you know anyone who wants to be part of that? And we're like, well, we've got 250 guys probably want to do so. Like we'll make sure that they are kind of kept up to date with as much as we can as well, because the benefit to us is obviously we've got like 250 makers. We can just get a message out to them really easily. So people will come to us with things that we can kind of quickly disseminate. So that's another like benefit of them kind of, I suppose, working with us, is because they'll get access to things which are just helpful. Yeah.
Are there circumstances under which you would have to turn someone away from Jamii because like it doesn't fit your business model? When you're running a business that's basically there for an impact, but it also has to make a profit in order to have any impact in the first place. I feel that it must be a bit of a toil.
Yeah, and that is definitely something that we've had to kind of work out. So generally we say we're selective, we're not exclusive.
Yeah.
So we select the brands that we work with. And like one of the main things that we think about is literally like, is this going to work on this platform? Because it's just not worth anyone's time if we say, oh yeah, come on. And like, you know, we have like data on our search bar. So we know what people are searching for. We obviously know what people are buying. Like I mentioned, the products that we tend to have on the site, like we're kind of known for like gifting, like lifestyle things. If someone comes along and's like, I sell hammers, that's amazing. And I love that for you. But no one is going to be searching for hammers on our site.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be a waste of your energy getting yourself set up. And it's going to be a waste of our energy, you know, promoting, because no one thinks, oh, I need a hammer. Let me go on to Jamii. Like, that's just how it is. And I don't think anyone will ever think that.
Yeah.
So that's like one of the times where we're just like, we would love to work with you, but it's just, it's not going to make sense for anyone. We always had like a rock solid mission.
Yeah.
But for us, our how has always been more fluid, like our how and our what. So, you know, we started off as a discount card and then we kind of evolved to an online marketplace and we did the pop-ups, blah, blah, blah. But that kind of came from, oh, there's a need for us to do this, or there's an opportunity here that's presented itself, so we'll kind of go in this direction. But that has meant, like, as time's gone on, when we've had either opportunities come to us or questions be posed to us, we have really had to think, does this make sense? You know, for instance, like go back to the hammer example, because people ask us all the time, like, we'd love to have things like funeral services, that find that on Jamii, or to find plumbers on Jamii.
How do you deal
and
with
things
this?
like that? And at the start, great, we would love that too.
Give it a go.
Yeah. But I mean, for those examples, the way that a marketplace works is if someone searches something, there's got to be a plethora of results.
Yeah.
If there's not, then people will
It's
just
not
switch off
market.
very quickly. Yeah, literally. So we were just kind of like, well, if we're going to have plumbers, then we need to have like loads of them. And we couldn't find loads of them.
Maybe there should be Jamii professional services.
I know. That's on the whiteboard somewhere.
No, but like seriously, I completely can see that. Yeah, for sure.
But at the time, we had to basically make the decision that we don't have the resources to start what would essentially be a completely different part of the business.
Yeah.
And it's such a shame because people keep asking, oh, you know, could you help me with a driving instructor? Or, you know, or anything like that. And there's so many, like a driving instructor is just like, well, yeah, but you need one in a specific postcode.
Yeah.
So, like, but, you know, so we've had to make so many of these decisions, but it's really hard because it's like, I would love to do that, but we just can't. And sometimes it takes us a while to really kind of weigh up all the options and be like, is this a yes or is this a no? As time's gone on, it has gotten a little bit easier. I think because we've made so many of these decisions now, we're pretty clear. Okay, this is doable, this isn't doable. What's the opportunity cost if we do this versus that? Is it worth it? Blah, blah, blah. But oh my goodness, years ago, it was just like, people give us an idea and be like, that's great. Let's
run with it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not far off that. Like, I'm just coming out of that phase now and I'm finally like, yeah, I actually can't do everything. Like, yeah, I could do this and this and this and this, but like not all at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, no, yeah.
And you mentioned there, just thinking a little bit about your team, you work with your sister.
Yeah.
How has that been? How do you navigate that relationship on a personal and a professional level?
So I actually don't know the answer to that question. Like, we get on really well, and we get on really well personally, and we get on really well like professionally. And
That's amazing.
Yeah, and I people always say, oh, I could never work with my whoever.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, yeah, I don't know how we've done it, but we just have. I think part of it is because from the outset, like I started Jamii. So I think from the outset, it was kind of, it wasn't something that we were doing together. And then it was like, okay, you're not doing this and I need you to do that. It was always, I always felt like this is all my responsibility. And at the start, she was just helping out, like she was just kind of pitching in. So I think that helped with that dynamic of just kind of like, just trying to get things done. And I suppose who was responsible for what. Yeah. But then as time's gone on, and obviously she works full time now, like we have very clear spheres of like expertise. Like there are certain things, like I don't touch the site anymore. Like if I touch the
Really?
site, yeah, she gets upset with me. Like that's
her
domain.
thing.
Yeah, that's her domain. Everything to do with the website, everything to do with email, social media, like that is what she does.
Yeah.
To the point where I'm even asking her, oh, what should we do on this and what should we do on that? Because she's so into it. Like she's a real kind of expert now on things. And I'll be making suggestions for like, oh, we should do an email on this. She's like, no. We won't be doing an email on it. Similarly, like obviously I've got my spheres that I work on, and then she'll obviously input that, but that's kind of the stuff that I work on, and so that's really clear. But it has been great because I think she understands me a lot and I understand her, so even when like we're disagreeing about things, it doesn't kind of become personal because I know where she's coming from.
Totally. And also I think there's almost more of a freedom to have a disagreement with your sister than, you're not worried that you're going to offend her. Like your sisters, you love each other, it's all fine. Like, it almost creates like a freedom, I think. I've worked with quite a few people who are either couples or siblings in business, and I think it either works or it doesn't. And it sounds like for you guys, like it just works. But what's the vision? What's the dream?
You know what?
Or are you still putting one foot in front of the other?
Yeah, I kind of am. And it's kind of, it comes back to what I was saying about like the how and the what is still fluid. Like we know the why. That's always been the same. The how we get there, like we're open to opportunities presenting itself. I think as well as we've kind of realized what our expertise is and isn't. So we're a little bit more kind of precise in like, no, we're not going to do that. Or yeah, we'll do that. Like for instance, we're doing a collaboration with Made next month.
That's so cool.
That was decided 3 weeks ago. So I couldn't tell you what opportunities.
That's amazing. And I get it.
What I mean?
Yeah.
Obviously, that's like not a strategic thing.
No, totally. Similarly, like I find if I get a big job put in front of me, it's like, yes, it's exciting and I'd love to do this job and it'll be great. But like, I genuinely have to think, because that also means you're going to close yourself off to other opportunities, and like having that freedom to be open to opportunities, I think is really amazing. Honestly, I could talk to you for ages, but I've got like 5 minutes left. And one question that I just really wanted to ask you before we finished is, we were talking before a bit about small businesses. And I mean, I have a small business, like it's tiny, but it's a small business. I used to work in the corporate world. It's 2 different worlds completely. Everything's different. You've got so many more things to think about. And, it's tough, especially if you just aren't armed with loads of cash and resources. But I would love to know your opinion on this. I think, given the kind of context we were talking about in terms of like, we have lost so much of like the realness of like what we had. I think trust and connection is becoming far more scarce. And I think that actually like the trust and the connection that you get from really having a real interaction with a small business is going to become more and more valuable. And I'm not saying that I think, we're going to see all the big conglomerates fall and small businesses are going to take over the world. But I do think that actually small businesses will have more power as time goes on, because I think the value of what they're providing and the personal touch will be genuinely more valuable and worth paying more for to people. And I'd love to know what you think.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, I think, like we were saying, that convenient, the big boys, they're not going away. But I think there's something that small businesses offer that they just can't compete with. And I get asked this a lot, how do you compete with, the big guys? And it's like, everything that they have, there's something that they don't have, and they can never have. They can't replicate it.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Like back in like kind of 2020 or whatever, people kept asking me, what will you do if Amazon copies Jamii? What will you do if whoever copies Jamii? And it's just like, well, first of all, we have to stop them. Like, what could I do?
Yeah.
Like, you got to roll with it. But second of all, like, they could never replicate our authenticity. They could never replicate the reputation that we've built, the kind of the deep connections that we have with our customers. They just cannot.
Yeah.
And so we just
let them try, dare them. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you just have to really lean into those strengths as a small business, because people crave them. They really want to be part of something. And that's kind of where the sweet spot for a small business is, because no one shops with like these big guys for anything that's not just convenience and ease. Like, just like, oh yeah, I need it obviously by tonight.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
And just before we let you go, with like all your experience, like you obviously have such insight into working with these small businesses. What are your kind of top tips for success as a small business owner?
So top tips would be everything can be Googled. Talking to someone yesterday who had the quote, keep calm, Google hard. And I was like, that is epic. I'm using that. So definitely that. Don't ever be afraid to ask for help, because small businesses are amazing, and the owners are so lovely always, and are always, in my experience, have been really willing to share experience, expertise. Oh, do you know this person? Blah, blah, blah. And to a degree, it is about like who you know.
Yeah.
Network.
Yeah. And also just remember, like, there literally is no end. So you got to enjoy the journey.
Yes.
The end
Yes.
does not exist. It doesn't exist. And I think once I realized that, it just made everything a lot more easier.
Yeah.
Like, it's a roller coaster that you're never getting off. So you just got to roll with it and enjoy the highs. And then when the lows come, the lows is what make you enjoy the highs. So do you know what I mean? You just got to keep pushing through.
I love that. I feel like that is a perfect takeaway for anyone that's like on their small business journey, wherever they are, whether they're on day 1, day 10, year 10. It's always going to be a bit of a roller coaster. But for anyone that is wondering where they can find out a little bit more about Jamii, where should we find you?
Yes, so we are at lovejamii.com, which is LOVEJAMII.com. I had to make sure I spelled that right. And all of our socials are UK Jamii, so UKJAMII. Send us a message on there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, that was so good.